Hello, welcome back to Skyrocket, welcome back to Saturday Club. I hope life finds you better than it finds me at the moment. Why do we bodge? And I don't mean that time that you used your wife's tights to make a fan belt so that you could get home from holiday at 2 in the morning. Why do we do jobs that we've had a run up at preparing for badly, incorrectly, however you want to put it? The only three excuses I can think of for bodges are price/cost, skills, time. I've got a Caravelle in there, T25, it's beautiful, and I want it. If I had the money, I would buy it. It's a bargain for what it is. And I don't mean that as in it's cheap for a reason, genuine reason for sale, it's a bargain. Came to me for a couple of little bits of work in preparation to put it up for sale. One of those things was put it in for an MOT, so it's got a year's ticket on it. The gentleman selling it is a very dear customer of mine. I'm going to miss not seeing him anymore when he stops coming around because the Caravelle's moved on. He's an honest, nice person, and he wants to make sure he's selling an honest, nice vehicle. So, an MOT. And it failed on emissions and 2 small areas of rust. Right at the back, where the rear arms mount up, about this long, on the outside, as the cab comes down and it turns around into the sort of sill return, there was some rust. Not a big deal, it's a T25, they rust, that's what they do. So I set to it, just tapping away, and I broke through the rust, and buckets full of dusty mud fell out of it, and the panel still sounded solid. I was like, okay, here we go. That is filler, or bog, as I call it. On the back, you can see tide lines where the steel is progressively rotted away to nothing, and this pink stuff is fiberglass. The white stuff is body filler. Bondo, bog, it's got 1,000,001 names. That Caravelle had a rust hole in it when it was repaired. Somebody knew that that was there. Note these bits. That's extrusion. That's where the liquid filler has squeezed through a hole and coiled itself up like a Play-Doh mould and then dried. So what happened? Well, based on the paint job, I think this was done by a body shop, because directly under the paint, there's primer, and directly under the primer is filler. Whoever painted that knew that was there. So let's go through our list of reasons, shall we? Time. Ain't got time, need to get it done. All right. So you drove all around the houses to parts factors. You had to buy a P40 kit, which is the fiberglass stuff. That's the distinctive pink stuff with the little strands that make your skin itch. Why did I touch that end of it? You had to buy a P38 kit. That's that whitish looking stuff, or equivalent. You had to buy sanding sheets. You had to buy spreaders. So that's all time out of your day. You then had to mix up the bog, trowel it on, so thick. And in order to achieve a finish that shiny, that surface has to be pretty much perfect. I can see no sanding scratches. I can't see any divots outside of what happened when I was chipping it off. Someone spent hours, maybe even days, getting this finish perfect before they painted it. So time, I don't think so. Cost. All right. Filler's expensive. Filler is very expensive for what it is. You've got essentially a polyester compound and a hardener in a tub. Sanding sheets aren't cheap either. And a large quantity of everything. Plus a sander, if you used a sander. The materials to do this job with bog would have cost quite a lot of money. Then you factor in the labour cost if this was done by somebody who was billing. That's a lot of labour to do that, unless they're working to a fixed quote. Now, I'm not saying you should feel bad for not being able to afford to buy a welder. I'm in no position to talk I spend a surprising amount of my life skint. Honest fact of the matter is, this job, regardless of hourly rate, does not pay well. I do this job because I love it and I can't imagine doing anything else. There is so much lost time. You spend 4 hours looking for parts. You can't charge a customer for 4 hours of Googling or ringing around parts places. You can charge them for the parts when you find them, or at least tell them how much it's going to cost. But I can't bill somebody for sitting on Google. That's 4 hours out of my day just gone. I could have been doing something else. But it has to happen. What I'm saying is, I'm not one of these people who's going to sit here and say, this thing's really cheap. It only costs £6,000. I live in the real world, where even a couple of £100 is a lot of money. So I'm not sitting here giving you a lecture. But false economy is a real thing. On certain websites now, just a balls basic, get you started, off down the road welding kit. Even comes with a mask sometimes. It'll run you 70 or 80 quid, up to like 150 for a nice one. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's quite a lot of money. A big tub of bog is 40 quid. 2 big tubs of bog is 80 quid. All the sanding sheets you need, probably add another 20 or 30 quid on top for that. Then if you're being sensible about it, you've got your masks and things. You're coming up close to the cost of a welder. And here's the thing. You have that welder for the rest of your life. You can make that welder make you money. Once you finish welding up your car with it and getting reasonably good at welding, you can weld other people's cars if you wanted to. You could use that tool to make you some money. I did the same thing with my K-Jet gauges. I bought them to fix my car. Then I was like, I can pressure test other K-Jet cars now. And I've fixed what was wrong with my car. So price-wise, again, I'm not sure I buy it. You might be saving 20, 30 quid. We aren't talking about what we're charging our customers. I'm just talking about you out there in the real world, your project. Because I don't expect you to relate to a mechanic. We aren't human, if you listen to what a lot of people say about us. But you, out there working on your personal project, I like to think a lot of you are here to learn some bits. Budget is an important thing. What I would say is, unless you absolutely need to get to work in your vehicle, which I've been there, I've dailied nothing but classics. The newest car I own is from 2002, and that is the newest car I've ever owned. And that's Maggie. You saw the bumper repair. I hope you saw the bumper repair. If not, have a look at that. It's up there somewhere. But your classic project that you're doing on the weekends, buy in bits. Get the welder first. Get a gasless MIG welder. They're not ideal. Maybe they weld a bit hot, whatever, but they can be dialed in. I ran a gasless MIG welder because it's all I had. I was given it because it was broken and I fixed it. I couldn't afford welding gas. I still can't afford welding gas. I'm old school, I use CO2. Sheer luck that there is a brewery supply company on site and they don't rent to welders. They'll rent to me because they know where their gas bottle is. That's the only reason that I can afford to run a welder with gas. But if you're doing a project, do it in stages. Car's not going anywhere. Equipment / cost. By the time you've factored in buying the cheaper option, you're not far off the cost of just buying the proper tool. And I would argue buying the proper tool will get you a return on your investment, because you can go one of two ways. Give me a minute. All right, just to prove I'm not on my soapbox about this, this is a tub of body filler. It's mostly full because I try not to use a lot of it after I've done body work, but I use body filler. There's nothing wrong with body filler when it's used properly. Here's the thing. Do you want to buy a used tub of body filler? Didn't think so. Do you want to buy a welder that I've only used once? Knock 20 quid off of what you paid for it because you've only used it once. Someone will bite your hand off because they need a welder. So even if you spend £100 on a welder instead of 80 quid on body filler and the supplies for body filler, you now have something that you can either use to make money or you can just sell it and then you're back where you started. You could buy the welder, do the welding job, sell the welder, use the money from the welder to buy the body filler and sanding sheets you need to finish the job. Might even have some money left over for a few brewskis while you do the job. Sometimes when it looks expensive, when you break it down, you actually end up saving yourself a shed load of money. And that's what I'm all about on this channel. I see some business from this. This is essentially a video business card. It shows I'm honest, it shows I do good work. If you want to be cynical about it, I do it because I enjoy it. But I have gotten work from this because people have seen my work ethic and they want me to work on their cars. Great. But what I'm really here to do is save you guys money. I'm telling you, this isn't the solution. It just ain't the solution. This is a lot of money sitting here and it's useless now. Skills. I can't weld. Bollocks. You can weld. Everybody can weld. If you were to set up a windy gun, maximum setting, as powerful as it will go, and try and tighten down an M6 bolt, you're going to snap the M6 bolt. That doesn't mean that you can't use a windy gun. It means the windy gun is set wrong. Welding is exactly the same. If you get the welder set up nicely, I would recommend practicing on a couple of bits of scrap metal as thin as you can get, because if you can weld a bit of scrap metal to another bit of scrap metal without burning a hole in it, or it not sticking, and it's nice and strong and you can bend everything around the weld, ideally the area at the weld should be solid. If you can do that with thin stuff, heavy gauge metal is easy to weld. It's a joy to weld because you just get it as hot as you want, essentially. I know the welders out there are typing, no, just calm down. This isn't for you, all right? You can weld. You could learn to weld. A welder is just a tool. You set the tool up correctly to do the job you're doing at that moment. That's why it's got switches and buttons on the front of it. You're supposed to adjust it. And once you've figured it out, you now have a skill. I'm not saying you're going to be CE certified and go out welding gas pipe up, but it's a skill. You could do it at home. You could make stuff with it as a hobby, right through to you might find you really enjoy welding and I'm going to offer my services. I'm going to do MOT welding for people. Anything from schlepping a patch into a sill to full on, I'll replace that entire wheel arch with a pretty repair panel and it's going to look lovely. You're not going to get there troweling body filler into things. So again, the skills thing, everybody can weld. Everybody has the capacity to be able to weld, I should say. I know I'm using a very specific example here, but this is something I see so often. I use filler. I'm not a body filler snob. I use body filler. I don't use, what's that? 1/8 of an inch of body filler to cover a rot hole without stopping the metal from rusting first. Are you nuts? And one more point on the time aspect. Yes, it is a little more time consuming to do it this way. But here's the thing. This won't need doing again for another 20 years if I've done my job. This leads to 5 years down the road, it failing on the same corrosion it failed on when they did that probably, and costing the owner time and money while he has it repaired and getting in my way. I've got more important things to be doing than this right now. Not that I'm not grateful for the work, but I am snowed under. This was meant to be a quick in and out MOT button up. Right, I'm sorry if I came in a bit hot there, but I felt that this needed raising. As with everything on Saturday Club, this seems to be the trend. Again, this is meant to be a confidence builder. You can do this. And bodging things doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help you. If you think to yourself, oh, well, it's my car, it doesn't matter, it's only my car, that's fine. You're going to have to do this again in 5 years. And this crap is all going to have to come off for you to do it again in 5 years. And that's going to keep happening until you end up with major structural issues. Cut the rust out, weld new metal in. A lot of the time you can buy pre-made panels. I'll go and get one. Give us a sec. That is a complete panel from just above the body seam all the way down to the return. And what had happened on this, in case you're interested, is this bit had a little bit of rust here, right? And I ended up chasing that to here. That's how much rot there was. And then up to about here before I stopped finding surface rust. And up to about here before I stopped finding body filler to the point that I could weld the new panel in. The amount of filler, I'm not joking, they must have used 100 quid's worth of filler to do this job. Also, you'll notice this panel is uncut. The virgin panel, right? That's because they did this on both sides of the bus. So everything I've just said to you now about time, cost, materials, double it. It's the same with everything. Gaskets. I'll just use RTV. Okay. And then when the RTV squeezes out and blocks up a carburetor drilling, what do you do then? Because now you broke down at the side of the road. Wiring. I'll just twist that together and wrap insulating tape around it. That'll work for a bit, definitely. Then the heat will get to the insulating tape and it'll bake it and it'll dry out. The insulating tape will fall off. And either, if you're lucky, the joint will come apart. If you're unlucky, the insulating tape will come off and it's going to touch something metal and burn your car to the ground because you were too cheap to go out and buy some crimp connectors and some heat shrink or solder and Tessa tape and all that stuff. Dealer choice, whatever. But we're not here to argue about that. Another example. This is a relay and fuse block from a Skyline GTT at R34. Now that Skyline is running 700 horsepower and it's capable of running 900 horsepower, and I was called up because it wouldn't start. Now that's because this had melted. There are two honking great 40 amp relays in here. Look at the gauge of the wiring on the back, tiny. Now, we've got two connections here that have melted through. It's melted through the side of the plastic here, and it has turned the fuse material into solder and soldered the terminals together inside the fuse box. This has a pair of high flow fuel pumps in the tank. They need a lot of power. They take a direct feed from the battery to run, and they're switched on by the original fuel pump feed from the car, which turns the relay set on. Now, these have to be fused. They're fused at 30 amps. The wire gauge they'd used was clearly something like 15 amp wire. It's way too small. So the wiring got hot. As the wiring got hot, the resistance increased in the wiring. The fuses got hot. The fuses kept blowing. Do you know what they did? They just put 40 amp fuses in the fuse box and sent her off down the road. How that car didn't burn to the ground, I don't know. We got lucky. Managed to buy this exact relay set. There's nothing wrong with the relay blocks. There's nothing wrong with the relays. It just wasn't wired up properly. I bought some nice fat cable, reconnected everything, and we're buttery now. The fuses get ever so slightly warm. They should do. Big circuit, and they're running continuously. But if they get up to hot territory, the fuses should blow. The circuit is trying to protect itself. You can't just jam a 40 amp fuse in a 30 amp circuit and go, "Ah, mate, fixed." There is no arrogance in what I'm saying. And I am not pretending I'm the best mechanic that's ever lived. All I'm saying is that getting yourself home, I actually have a thing for this. I call it a permanent repair, where you do something at the side of the road and it just works so bloody well, you never get around to really sorting it out. That's fair enough. But when you do something to the detriment of the vehicle in the long term, potentially safety related, that's a bodge. And everybody out there can do better than that. I don't consider it to be ignorance. If you can work out how to bodge something, you can work out how to fix it properly. If you have the skill set to sand this much bog, this perfectly flat, to get a mirror finish on a dark blue, that's not easy, by the way. The darker the colour, the harder it is to get a nice finish on. Then you have the skill set to learn how to weld. That's just my 2 cents. More than welcome to enter into a dialogue with you guys in the comments if you want to talk about it. I hope I haven't come across as snobbish or arrogant. Just simply pointing out that there are better ways to do things, and quite often the proper way to do something is actually the most efficient. When this bus leaves here, it is going to have brand new sheet metal welded to the existing sheet metal. It's going to be filled where the weld is and prettied up for appearances, but it's not there to cover any rot holes. Once it is welded in, I'm going to come in, I'm going to zinc primer everything, I'm going to zinc primer the inside of the structure, which has already been rust inhibited, by the way, and then I'm going to blast a load of Por 15 in there. It's going to be basically painted. I'm going to paint the outside so it looks nice. I might even get a bit fancy and get the old wax lance in there and do a cavity fill. This repair is going to take roughly the same amount of time as covering it in bog. The difference being is this will last 20 years at least. It will certainly outlive my warranty, put it that way. All right, a personal note. I am truly sorry that my videos are so hit and miss at the moment. The channel is something I love and it keeps me focused on more pragmatic things in life, but things are hit and miss, my end at the moment. So when I say that I plan on a video coming out at the end of the week and it doesn't happen, please understand it's not laziness and they aren't hollow promises. Pretty much the only hobby I have at the moment is video editing. Unfortunately, the subject matter is not going to plan. I just don't feel like it's the right thing to do to put a half-finished video out. You guys deserve better than that, especially my members. I actually was on the verge the other day of withdrawing memberships because I feel like I have, not intentionally, but I feel like you guys are getting your money's worth. On that note, if you feel like cancelling your membership and coming back later when the dust's settled, feel free. I won't take it personally because the memberships are a list of things you're benefiting from. If you aren't benefiting from them, you shouldn't feel like you have to pay for them. I don't want you feeling obligated. Okay? Please, I will not take it personally. Your money is precious to you. You earned that. You went out and worked for it. I'm not going to take money. I don't believe in a free lunch. I appreciate you for hanging on if you do. However, there is zero obligation there. And you're always welcome to start it back up again later on down the line. Do you know what I mean? Hopefully, shit will settle down and I'll be able to be firing on all cylinders with the channel again. The good news is I've got probably 12 videos lined up at the moment. It's just nothing's resolving. I can't give you a video that's 3/4 of the way through the story. Do you know what I mean? That's like sitting and watching a movie and then like, can you imagine watching Inception and you get like 3/4 of the way from the end and the credits roll? You're like, what the f happened? How did the story end? I can't do that to you guys. The videos need to be finished and I'm not in a position to finish them at the moment for one reason or another. Be it that certain vehicles aren't cooperating. I'm not going to spoil it. Be it that certain other vehicles need significantly more work than they were supposed to have needed, thus holding me up with other projects I'm in the process of filming. I'm not going to spoil it. Be it that there currently just seems to simply not be enough hours in the day. For whatever reason, I haven't forgotten about you. And I do appreciate you. I appreciate you enough that I really mean it. Feel free to cancel your membership and come back later when things are a bit more consistent. Well, that's the end of the coffee break. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to go and carry on welding up a T25 that came in for a fuel problem. Have a great Saturday. I'll see you again.